This is an intro. Intro.
Hustle and Float Chart with your boy,
My boy,
Matt Wolf and Joe Fier.
Hey, it's a good day today.
Is it? What's so
Always
good
a
about
day.
it?
Because I said so.
Okay. All right.
Is it a good day in your world, Matthew?
It's a good day every day.
Damn right. Good answer.
We had a lot of amazing conversations today. That's why it's a good day.
Oh, okay. Whatever you want to label it as.
Well, you know,
I just had a great day.
It's interesting because a lot of times, like if I wake up and I'm like, you know, I'm not feeling it today, right? Like sometimes you get that in business, right? I'll wake up and I'll just be like,
Life, yeah.
I don't really want to do a whole lot today. I just want to lie around in bed. You know what the best thing I've found to snap me out of it is?
What's that?
Talk to people, have cool conversations.
How do you do that? Like on non-podcasting days?
Well, if I'm in like a really crappy like headspace or something, you know how I do it because I usually call you and be like, "Hey, I'm in a crappy headspace. Let's chat some shit out."
I'll be like, "Don't be a pansy, push through." But no, I don't say that. I say, "Go for a walk, Matt. Do you want to go for a drive?
I'll call.
Do you want to go for some food? Do you want to drink early at 8 a.m.?" No, we don't ever do that.
I start drinking tequila at 8 a.m. No.
Woo! Shirts off and you're no.
Quite honestly though, like just having conversations is like probably the best mood booster for me. It's usually I'll call you, I'll call our other partner Brad Costanzo, have a good call with him. You know, I'll talk to my wife if she's around during the day. I'll talk to, you know, we have a pretty good network of people. I don't need to list off everybody, but
you can. We'll be here a while.
I can keep going. I'll talk to my dad sometimes.
That's nice.
I'll talk to my kids. I will call up Brad Spencer, another good buddy of ours.
Yeah, a lot of shout outs. We'll have a lot. They're all good people. We love all those beeps.
I'll call up my good friend Barack Obama, or maybe Richard Branson.
Shout out Barack. Thanks for listening.
Elon Musk. I mean, you know, my inner circle.
Okay, got it. Yeah, your circle of trust. Well,
yeah.
You know who else is in our circle of trust? Is Markian Sich.
Yes.
And that's the badass we're talking to. This guy is an active duty Marine.
Yes.
Who also is amassing wealth in real estate.
Yes.
And the dude's been doing it a while, and he's young. He's only 28, I believe is what he said.
Yes.
And that's insane. Like the fact that when he says that stuff and the way he carries himself, he's so experienced. He has an insane story that I'll let you tell him. You know, he'll tell you himself. But dude, in San Diego, like he used to be stationed out here at Miramar. We live in San Diego, and he used to fly these CH-3. Jesus, I can't write. CH-53E Super Stallion. These massive, like, loud, vibrating helicopters, basically. Like, they actually fly over my house often, and they literally rattle everything. So, the dude was saying, like, he would spend 10 to freaking 12 hours in this thing at a time, doing missions all around the world, and he's just such a cool guy. He's graduated into a different job now that I think he likes a lot. But the fact that he's doing all of this, but also creating wealth in real estate, and not only just investing for himself, but he's teaching it. He has a team. He's partnered up with all these like crazy. It's insane.
Yeah. I'm curious if anybody can find the moment that he blew my mind in this episode. It's probably pretty obvious, actually. But there's a point in this episode where I'm like, holy shit, I didn't know you can do that. And I just like sort of picked his brain on this one topic for like 20 minutes.
Gasp. Yeah, no, it was pretty badass. So Markian lines out a bunch of ways that, and here's the thing. All right. He lines out a bunch of ways to use real estate and pair it up with whatever you got going in business. His focus is talking to active duty Marines, which is, you'd think, okay, well, we don't have probably a lot of them, but I guarantee we have a lot, or some of them listening.
What's up, Robert?
Thank you. Yeah. Shout out. And but basically at the end of the day, and I said it towards the end, is like, you know what? But at the end of the day, entrepreneurs are all active duty in our businesses, which, you know, takes a lot of our mind space, time away from family sometimes, all that stuff. And the fact that he's doing this for active duty Marines or just military in general, a lot of these concepts can be applied right here for you. So the fact that his branding and all that stuff's around active duty military and all those folks, don't let that dissuade you from dissuade. Is that a word?
I'm not active duty.
Yeah.
I'm not a veteran, but I got a ton of value from this. And
you done learned something?
I done learned a lot.
Good.
You know, because what he's teaching isn't unique to just, you know, veterans and active duty. He's teaching wealth building that anybody can apply. It just so happens that his sort of avatar for his business is military folk.
And it's even cool because he bought a bunch of our stuff, traffic course, and I think the affiliate course, and has been listening to the podcast for a long time. So we've been talking a long time to get him on the show, because the guy has applied what he's learned on this podcast and all these products, and actually has executed a ton of stuff with that to grow exactly what he's talking about today. So it's just, I think it's a really cool honor to have him on. It meant a lot to him, and it means a lot to us that he actually does all of that. I think it's just super cool.
For sure. And we took notes on this one.
Oh, damn right we did. And it's copious notes. Copious. Yes. So
Can you give me the dictionary definition of copious?
a lot.
Okay, that's probably about right.
Thorough, maybe?
I don't know.
More a lot, I think. Well, I would say more thorough than it's a mixture of both.
Yeah.
Say on average 3 to 4 pages of notes, if you want to be specific, is typically what each episode comes out to.
Yeah.
And this one shouldn't be any different. So
And it's all the tools, the resources, the concepts, the tactics, the strategies, pretty much everything we talk about, you're getting the Cliff's Notes version of. So once you listen to this episode, you grab the notes, you're going to get like a full-on refresher of everything we talked about.
yeah. And it's gratis. Totally free.
It's comp. It's on us.
It's comp. It's on us, man. Gotcha, man. You're VIP to us.
All right.
Whip out your phone.
Whip it out.
Don't drive and whip out your phone. That's weird.
Don't drive and whip out anything.
That's probably not a good idea. You might get arrested for both, actually.
Depends on what you're whipping out, I guess. But
And what part of the world you're in.
if you text the word comp, that's COMP, to this phone number, 38470. That is 38470.
Comp.
Text the word comp.
38470.
Comp.
38470.
Comp. Do you think that's going to get stuck in people's heads and then they're
That's
just
the
going to
idea.
go and like text it and actually follow through?
I hope they do. I hope you do listening.
Yeah.
All of y'all in Florida, everyone in Florida tuning in right now.
If you're in Florida, you damn well better pull out your phone and do this, because we're talking specifically to you right now.
Yeah, this episode's for, well, California. I got to get my California love.
California love.
Hey, we're gonna get cease and desist or something about it. Let's don't get
Okay,
too far
yeah,
with
but
that
my
song.
melody was probably so shitty that
That's true.
nobody would actually say that I was singing that song.
This is why you play guitar and without a microphone in front of you. All right, so with your phone is 38470. Text comp to that number, 38470 comp, or go to hustleandflowchart.com/comp and you'll get the same thing there. Be quick, they go away in a couple weeks. Yeah, that's about it.
Go do it.
You rock.
Let's go talk to Markian.
Markian, welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, man. Dude, this is a long-awaited interview or conversation. I hate to say interview. It's a conversation. Like we've met up in town in San Diego when you were in town. Had numerous phone calls, and we're finally making it happen. Woo.
Jeez, man, that was. I got to tell you, this is kind of surreal, and I don't know. I think I've heard other people say that on your podcast, but for real, guys, like this is a big deal for me. I was just telling my wife, I was like, I told you guys I was going to jump on the interview, whatever it was, like 2 or 3 months ago. And I was like, I didn't even care at the time, the day. I was just like, yes, I'm doing it. Like I've been waiting for this moment for so long, because you guys helped me out a lot in the beginning and now still. And it's really, I remember thinking like, I can't wait. Like that's going to be like my little success stories. Like I got on their podcast finally because no, I mean, seriously, I'm not saying
it.
that's it's a big deal for me. So
That's awesome,
I'm
man.
really pumped. Yeah, really pumped.
No, I know you've been not only a loyal listener, but you've implemented so many of the strategies that we put out there, which I think to us is the best, thanks that we can get, or that's what we live for. That's why we do this stuff anyway. And I think you're one of the most implementing, I don't know, crazy guys out there. But before even getting into your story, like which we'll get into in a minute, people don't even know what your background is, and then when they hear that, they're like, "What? Wait, what? He's doing all of this?" And yeah, so big hats off to you, dude. So thanks you.
Yeah, appreciate it. Of
course.
Sure.
So let's get into it, man. Like let's talk about, so you're an active duty Marine. You actually were a pilot, helicopter pilot, but switched and interesting story. Let's take us back a little bit.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
Give us that story and where you're at right now. I know there's a lot of bobs and weaves, so we might poke at it a little bit and dig in,
For sure. So I'm going to go way back just a little bit, just so there's more context. So I am a 3rd generation Ukrainian immigrant. who actually, when what that means is my grandparents moved over to the United States. They immigrated post World War II and religious suppression and all sorts of stuff. Then my parents grew up in the States. They were the second generation. And then they serendipitously ended up moving back to Ukraine, to the country of their heritage, I guess. And I was born there. And the reason why that happened is because if any of your listeners watched the wildly successful Chernobyl show on HBO, my dad was the first Westerner to be allowed on the grounds to do research, and he wrote the first dissertation on Chernobyl as from the Western perspective. And he was at MIT and Harvard, and the 10-pound brain, he just. Wow. Yeah, and so he was a Chernobyl he was a nuclear engineer there. Ended up but it was still the Soviet Union, right? I was born in 1990. It was still the Soviet Union, and so my parents had to go there. Basically by doing the first ever Rotary student exchange program to the former Soviet Union. And I was born 6 months after it crumbled. Wow. So my mom was in line 2 hours waiting for milk. And so that's where I was born. And so I'm painting that picture because I was born in a place that was just ruined by what the Soviet Union left after its fall. Right. And so this world was very different, and is very different still than America is. And I grew up there till I was 15 and a half. There's about 2 years in England and another year here or there where I lived in the States a little bit as a kid. But for the most part, I grew up, my formative years was all in Ukraine. And when I finally repatriated, so to speak, I was a sophomore in high school. And I moved to the States and lived with my grandparents without my parents. I'm the oldest of 7 children. I just came back because my parents were like, well, he's going to have the biggest culture shock of his life if he jumps right into college. So let's send him in to go to high school. Yeah. And it was still a culture shock. And that's when I think I started trying to figure out what makes America tick, right? Because America is awesome. and I living in Ukraine, I remember every single summer I wanted to figure out what makes America tick. What is happening? Why is everybody so pumped about business and entrepreneurship and building things so big and all this kind of stuff? And I ended up going to the Naval Academy, kind of on accident. My dad kind of dared me into it. He was like, oh yeah, you can apply here, there, or wherever. You can also apply to the Naval Academy. You probably never get in, but
wow. Yeah, thanks, Dad.
That's how I was like, all right, cool, I'll just get in then. And so I did, and I didn't know anything about the military. I didn't even know that the Marine Corps is part of the Navy, right? And I was just I just show up, and I don't know. Let's just say I was not anybody's favorite there for a while. I was not the most popular person in terms of how well I performed. People thought I was stuck up or I had an attitude or whatever. I also had a broken leg because I snapped my tibia in half 2 months prior to playing soccer. So I was just a mess, but I ended up doing very well in the long run, and I ended up making the best friends ever. And so here I am, I graduate, I become a Marine Corps officer, I go through that training, and I go down to Pensacola, Florida to become a pilot, and I catch this entrepreneurial bug. That seed, I think, that was planted in me by being in Ukraine and finally getting to America and wanting to figure it out, finally started coming out. So I started I remember me, my brother, and my friends from the academy made an app. My brother is a savant when it comes to app development. Full stack app development, iOS, Android, web, database, design, everything. And so he made an app for us, and we thought we were going to be millionaires before we were 25. Well, turns out the app world is kind of a cutthroat place, and you need to really be 24/7 involved because there's a bunch of copycats. And so the angel investors, when they found out they were all in the military and we're going to go on training exercise and deployments, they were like, there's no way we're going to invest in you guys. Yeah. So that was disheartening, but I didn't give up. And at the time, I started dating my now wife, Katya, and she was also Ukrainian, but she was winemaking. She was studying winemaking in France. And I didn't have that much money, and I wanted to go visit her all the time. So I kind of started doing like this rent hacking. So we would like live with four dudes in the house, and I picked like the smallest room, and I would save up all my money, and I got the Acorns app, and I started saving money, and I was like, I'm going to do all the things I can so I can save up every 4 or 5 months and go see her if there's like a little small break in training. And, you know, and so that was like the next level. So I already had this seed of trying to, you know, this entrepreneurial mindset, like trying to figure out what makes America tick. And then that just took it into overdrive, because like I finally was like, I don't want to keep saving money anymore. I want to just make more money.
Yeah. Let's light some, put some gasoline on this thing and figure it out.
Now,
a little.
Can I want to ask something real quick? So you mentioned that you had this sort of fascination with America and like what you know, what it stood for, and you know, why you felt it was so great, and you kind of started doing some research into what made America the place you wanted to be. What sort of conclusions did you came from? I'm kind of curious what your research led you to. So
that's actually the very next step. I was in this position now where the app stuff didn't work out. I'm still trying to figure out what makes America tick. And I realized, as being an active duty Marine officer, I needed something that I can build on the side while staying true to my number one professional priority, right? And that's being a good military officer, Marine Corps officer. And so I started researching passive income. And I know that's a buzzword, and I'll talk more about what I think about the words passive income, but I started researching that, and I found people like Pat Flynn and, you know, Tim Ferriss. And then I stumbled into Robert Kiyosaki, and he read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And then just all these light bulbs went off, and I realized what, in my humble opinion, what makes America tick and what is the cornerstone of American wealth is that it's real estate. And it's America is the only country that incentivizes ownership of itself as much as it does. There's no other country that has 6,000 pages of of tax code that incentivizes real estate so much. And so that's what I stumbled into, is I realized it's like, wow, you know, if America really wanted taxes to be simple and not that big of a headache, which is be like, all right, everybody pays 20%, screw it, you know. But America doesn't do that. The IRS is actually very, very smart. It's like this insane social engineering beast, and they realize, like, hey, people actually would rather not pay taxes more than they would rather not make less money. Like they hate taxes so much that we can use it as an incentive. And America's not the only country. Like, other countries do this too, but America just takes it into hyperdrive. And so these 6,000 pages were created. The first couple of pages, as Tom Wheelwright says, he's Robert Kiyosaki's like right-hand man with taxes, was, hey, these are the taxes you're going to pay. All income is taxable unless we say otherwise. And then the other 6,000 pages is, here's all the ways not to pay taxes. That's all. And that's all it is it's just a book of incentives. They're not loopholes. They're literally, America's like, hey, if you do this, we'll be so thankful. We'll actually give you a tax break. And in fact, if you do all of these real estate things, you might not pay any taxes at all on that money.
No.
And
why do you think that is, though? Why do you think they incentivize owning real estate? I mean, what's in it for the U.S. government if more people are owning real estate?
Right. So I think it's because it's like a multi-layered cake. It makes you, it's a form of entrepreneurship, which really, as you guys know, as soon as you started one entrepreneurial thing, your gears started turning and other things started happening. You started learning more, and one thing wasn't enough. You became thirsty, right? So real estate does that. Once you become entrepreneurial in that way, you start learning about more things. Then on top of that, you also make America's infrastructure better. Once you invest in a property, you're probably getting it. You're probably trying to make it better so you can make more rent, so it can produce more cash flow. So that aspect of it, they know, okay, you're probably going to, if you're doing well with that property, you're probably making it a better, safer living space for other American citizens, right? So the whole idea is that you're making America's infrastructure better. You're also providing jobs, because all of a sudden there's electricians, property managers, contractors, you name it, people needing to work around that entity, that little property or that massive apartment complex. That is a business, right? And there's so many people that feed off of that business, and so it's like this. It just the light kind of gets everybody, it shines on everybody, so to speak. So not trying to get too meta, but you know what I mean?
It makes sense. It's like the core of economy, of the growth of America. It supports everything. It's kind of that foundational layer, not to be too punny about it with houses and whatnot, but it supports everything.
Yeah, and I mean, it totally makes sense, because the whole economy grows. If you buy a house, well, you need to furnish the house. Furniture businesses grow. You need to run water and electricity. The utility companies grow. You need to, like, there's just so many knock-on effects of somebody purchasing a house.
Absolutely, and then agents, and then lenders, and then you said furniture, and it's just a huge layered cake of things that rely on it. And I think so. There's certain ways that the American tax code is absurd with how, or not absurd, like in a good way. It really hyper incentivizes it, and it's awesome. So I know that was like long-winded, but that is ultimately what I discovered was through taxes. I realized why this is truly like the cornerstone, because you make the money and then you keep the money because of it. You know what I mean? You don't give any of it away. So that's like almost double ROI, right? And so it's really, really cool. And I think, I'm not going to get this quote perfectly right, but I think Carnegie said that, I think something like 95% of millionaires become millionaires because of real estate in one way or another. Like and so in my mind, it's just like, it is truly in America, the cornerstone. And I want to make a t-shirt one day where it's like, side hustle plus investing in real estate equals America. Like, whatever it is you do, if you're a full-time entrepreneur or you have a W-2 with a side hustle, that's all awesome. But you should still invest in real estate. Like that should be a part of your strategy, in my opinion. Yeah.
Well, and it sounded like, house hacking, or you said rent hacking, actually. So that was your first, like toe into the water there, where you're like, this is what's possible here.
Yeah, and so there was no ownership of any kind of real estate in that case, but I did kind of get creative with my living expenses. And then later on, when I started learning about real estate, I realized all the things I should have done while I was living in Pensacola. I should have bought that house, and I should have rented out the other rooms to my roommates instead of, you know what I mean? And then that way, basically, if I would have bought that 4-bedroom house and I rented out those 3 other rooms, I would have been able to cover our mortgage and then some, instead of spending $200 even. And all of a sudden, that's when I can get into all the other benefits of real estate. But so I saw what I should have done, and then I learned about all these other military guys and gals that were doing that, and how after just several years they had bought a couple of homes and how they were just crushing it. And I was like, oh my gosh. And so I wrote basically a manifesto to all the things I should have done, and I called it military house hacking. And I ran the numbers, and I was like, how can you use the VA loan, which is for your listeners that that don't have a military background, it's basically it's just a benefit that we have that allows us to buy a home 0% down. And so you can buy a home with a VA loan, or if you're not, you don't have a military background, that's fine. You can buy one 5% down if you're going to live in it, or even 3.5% down. And then all of a sudden, like, if you don't mind renting out other rooms, or if you can get a 4-plex or a triplex or a duplex, you can rent out the other units. Like, that could potentially completely cover your rent. You just need to know how to run the numbers. Just make sure you account for your expenses, and all of a sudden your biggest expense in life is eliminated. And now you can use that money that you would have been spending, throwing it to the wind to some landlord, right? You're now basically taking that money and saving it up and rolling it into other investment properties, or you're saving up for your next down payment or whatever, and just rinse and repeat.
Wow. So that's I mean that seems like the easiest way in, or maybe the lowest barrier way in. I know we had a guy, Dana Robinson, on here that said he still does that. You know, he has other businesses and whatnot, but I think he owns like a fourplex in San Diego. I mean, it sounds like you can kind of pull this off in a lot of places. You just got to know your numbers, like you said, and get a little creative with the space that you're buying. Maybe even test it with a little renting. I don't know to get comfortable with it.
Yeah, you can even rent out literally space. Like you can treat your place as oh my gosh, I think it's called neighbor.com. Totally, just like you can rent out a corner or a room just if people want to use it as self-storage. Like
interesting.
You can do all sorts of crazy things. You can build a little granny suite out, in your backyard and have it be a tiny home on Airbnb. You can do all sorts of things. And once you start thinking about it, the creativity will just go crazy. And house hacking is just the art of how to, if not completely, at least mostly, try to eliminate your living expense.
Yeah.
Whatever you're comfortable with at whatever phase of life you're in,
Yeah. Now I want to get back to your story a little bit. So how did, being you were in the military, how did you initially get into real estate? Because I think the perception of real estate for a lot of people, obviously you've got some of the house hacking concepts that you're talking about here, but I think the perception of real estate for most renters is, that's hard for me to get into. So how did you initially get into real estate? Like, what was your first dipping the toes in the water while you were still active duty?
Yeah. So like I said, so the book was a manifesto on the things I should have done. So my first was not a house hack. I learned from others, and I, formulated what I thought I should have done, and what so many people are doing. What I did personally is I just bought a turnkey property. And what that is it's essentially, it's a ready to go rental property. Somebody bought an ugly home, and so a professional flipper and or renovator, contractor, whatever, they bought a home, they gutted it or they fixed it up or whatever they needed to do. They made it, they brought it up to standard. They found a renter, they found a property manager, they wrapped it all up in a nice little package and they handed it off to me. I went the easy route. Mm-hmm. Why? Because ultimately I wasn't sure where I was going to go with real estate in the long run. And I thought that was going to be the only thing I would have time for, or that I'd want to do is, again, being a pilot, I didn't have a lot of time, and I just wanted to get just a turnkey rental property, just, literally like window shopped for a while, ran the numbers on a bunch of them after making a ton of mistakes and almost buying terrible deals. But I just, I was like, what, I need to get into this. I need to just dive in, because I can, analysis by paralysis is what we call it. Like you can just keep overanalyzing it. You're never going to take action. And I was just like, screw it. I actually liquidated my Roth IRA. And I was like, I'm going to use this as a down payment. And I bought a turnkey. So, and that was it. And
I want to ask about the turnkey concept. So if you buy a turnkey house, does it cash flow in the beginning, or are you kind of losing money on the expenses for a little bit before it becomes profitable?
So with a turnkey property, if it's a true turnkey and you, so everybody has to do their own due diligence. Everybody has to run their own numbers. If you actually run the numbers and you know what you're doing, at least on a preliminary level, and you go to a turnkey provider, as they call it, that is trustworthy, that you can, check your sources or get some reviews on, it should be cash flowing day one. It should, and we shoot for ideally these days about 10%, maybe 10% minimum. And what I'm talking about 10% is, that is the cash flow. That is like literally what's going into your pocket annually. So if I had to spend, $24,000 on a 20% down payment plus closing costs and whatever, that I would get $2,400 every year, like net in my pocket. And that means like there you can get really crazy with your spreadsheets, but some, the mnemonic we use is PITI PMMV. And what that means is principal, interest, taxes, insurance, property management, maintenance, and vacancies. That you get the rent and you deduct all of that stuff. And then whatever's left over is like that, annually $2,400, so basically like $200 a month, right? And if you get that, then it's a fantastic deal because, oh, by the way, you're paying it off. Somebody else is paying it off for you, so your net worth is going up every month. Oh, by the way, that $200 is tax free because you're depreciating the home. I can get into that a little bit too. Oh, by the way, you bought an asset that's 5 times bigger than the money you put down on it, right? Because you leveraged, you put 20% down for 100% of a thing. And then, oh, and by the way, the principal and interest you're paying on your mortgage, inflation's happening in America, right? That's a crazy, if you think about it, that money is worth less and less every year. By year 30, the money you're paying on your mortgage is worth 54% of what you're paying for it year 1. And people get hung up. They look at, over 30 years, I'm going to pay so much interest. Who cares? I don't care. I could pay $1 bazillion in interest. Am I going to make 2 times bazillion in cash flow? I don't care what I don't care what the interest is as long as I'm making more than what I'm borrowing, than the interest I'm borrowing on. So, so there's inflation, right? I mean, that's actually, here's a cool sidebar. Guess how America's paying off its $22 trillion?
It's probably very similar to this model here, I'm guessing.
Yeah, it's inflation. Like America is inflating money partially because it needs to pay its own debt off by making it worth less.
Love it. Jeez.
So that's, and so we're basically capturing the price of money. We're playing the government's game and we're taking advantage of it. And then so all those things just layer on the awesomeness. As long as the cash flow is good, then everything else is just cream on top, because it could also be appreciating. 2008 could happen. I don't think it's going to happen as bad. There's probably going to be a correction down the road. But it doesn't matter. I literally don't care if my rental property in Georgia that I've never seen, by the way, never even stepped foot in, it's doing great. I love it.
And that's the turnkey one you're talking about?
Yeah. Okay. I've changed renters twice now. And it's only been vacant like 2 weeks in between each one. It's awesome. Wow. And the rent just went up $100. I love that place. And and so like this thing is just like, wait, what was I getting at? Sorry.
Interest and
yeah. So with that cash flow, that's just like the barometer. Like I'm just looking at that like, okay, as long as I'm making that cash flow, everything else is just icing. It's just icing, and it's appreciating. And I don't care. This is what I was going to get at. I don't care if it's worth $2 tomorrow instead of the $150 or $160 that it's worth. $1,000. Like, because do I still have a renter in it? And am I still making cash flow? Right. This is where the massive shift happened in my mindset. Was like, I don't care about saving money anymore. I would rather have $10,000 in my pocket every single month coming to me relatively passively, and we can talk about passive some more down the road, than have $2 million saved up when I'm 60.
Yeah, you are still sort of, when you're purchasing the house, you are still kind of shopping interest rates, right? Because the lower the interest rate, the more cash you're putting in your pocket.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, that kind of all plays into the calculus of how much cash flow I have, at the very bottom, the net.
So interest rates they matter when you're purchasing, but then, beyond that, who cares?
I kind of joked about but yes, you're right. It's essentially, if it fits in the numbers, if like for a particular here's why I'm saying that, because interest rate shouldn't stop you from getting a deal. Like if for some reason, and there's plenty of stories like this, like where you just don't have a high enough credit score to where a bank will never lend to you. Well, then find a good enough deal. Like, I don't care what you have to do, cold call, knock on doors, whatever you have to do, find a good enough deal to where even if you go to like your uncle and ask for a 10% hard money loan for 2 years, that you can still make the numbers work and you're still cash flow. And then meanwhile, those 2 years, you're using the cash flow to help you pay off whatever bad debt you had in your personal life. You bring your credit score back up, and then you refinance, boom, pay your uncle back off, and now you have a cash flowing rental property.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah, that makes sense. Now, I'm gonna be honest. The actual concept of a turnkey property is actually kind of blowing my mind because I didn't even know that was a thing until just now. That like you could go buy a house that somebody else already renovated for you, already found a renter for, already installed a property management company for you, and then you can just go buy that asset and buy that cash flow. I didn't even know that was a thing until just now. That's why I'm asking so many questions and digging deeper on it because I didn't even know you could do that.
Well, Markian, actually, like where you said it has to be a trustworthy source, like how would you suggest locating someone who's trtrustworthy?
I think the biggest thing is references and just looking at their track record. Like I'm just gonna give Nathan Brooks a shout out right now. So he's been on Bigger Pockets 4 times. Like this guy has it down to a science, right? And so he actually came to the Military Influencer Conference with us. He's one of our strategic partners. But there's plenty of good turnkey providers out there. You just need to, ultimately, I would go for picking a good market where the idea is that the rents are like high enough and the prices are low enough to where cash flow is possible. And a lot of times a rule of thumb is the 1% rule. Like if it rents for $1,000 that you pay $100,000 for it, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So yeah, and that's kind of like where the ballpark for most Midwestern and Southeastern turnkey providers, that's what they try to shoot for because it's a marketing thing. Like they're like, oh, it's a 1% property. Back in 2012, you could probably pull off getting a 2% property somehow in certain areas. That doesn't exist anymore. But, things have appreciated so much that it's almost impossible, like unless you literally get a foreclosure or just go really, really dig deep. But yeah, Matt, I mean, turnkeys are awesome if you're busy and you don't have time to do all the work. You do pay a little bit of a premium, but you know what? If your time is more valuable than saving a leveraged $10,000, which is really like only $1,000 or $2,000 out of your pocket on a property, and guess what? That you're not the guy that's an expert at how to hammer in those nails or how to inspect it or all that kind of stuff, and you just want to let a professional do it, so it's kind of out of sight, out of mind, and done properly. It's definitely worth it in my mind.
Yeah, and when you're looking at like turnkey properties, and I don't know, I don't even know if like buying more turnkey properties is even part of your business model anymore. So we don't have to like belabor this point too many times. Fine. But when you're looking at it, how much does location matter, or does it really not matter to you as long as the cash flow numbers make sense?
So location does matter. Market analysis is very, very important, and you want to. Biggest indicator for me, just like if I'm just going to do really quick back of the napkin, is job growth, because then job growth indicates that there's going to be inflation growth, and then, not inflation, population growth. Right. And then with population growth comes more demand. With more demand comes rent increases. Right. And so, and a lot of times you can start getting into like geography. Like for example, Memphis is a good example for this. Like there's a river flowing through it, and because there's a physical river on the west side, or it can't move much further unless they really start spilling over on the other side of the river and start building there and developing there. So it's much easier for the city to expand east. So that's what's called path of progress. If you buy out just on, just east of where most of the hustle and bustle is going on, that in a couple of years, it's probably the progress of that city is probably going to catch up with it. So that's like on the micro level, but macro level, look at like the big industries in that area. Look at industries that are potentially recession proof. Look at job growth. Is it higher than the average in the country? That kind of stuff. Market analysis is really a big deal, and that's ultimately that's what I do now. Is I mostly educate. That's where I'm not gonna dive into it too much, but basically as somebody that made a lot of mistakes, I decided I want to create an online business that educates military members how to not make the mistakes I did. And we called it active duty passive income, because if an active duty guy can do it, then anybody can do it. And anyway. And
that's what's perfect. That's why a huge topic here is, we're talking about active duty. That's who your focus is. But every entrepreneur listening right now is active duty in their business. It's obviously different, but absolutely. Yeah. So let's chat about maybe your vision of, because you brought it up a few times already, the passive income, like the way that you see passive income and define it. And then maybe we can transition into some ways that entrepreneurs listening, maybe there's some active duty listening as well, probably, and can start taking some first steps.
Yeah. So I think passive income is very much a buzzword, but I also really still love the term because I think it's something, it's like something you want to pursue. It's something that you can have as a dream of, I want to get that mailbox money. Like it's just coming in, and so I think it's a good term that to like put on a vision board, almost like it has value intrinsically because it's an important concept to strive for. Are you going to attain passive income, like absolutely passive income, unless you're making royalties or somebody just like dumps money at you? Probably not. But in terms of real estate and even online business, like you guys know, if you spend the time building the system, and that means like finding the property manager, finding the perfect property, finding good tenants, it will then exist almost passively, and you will get that mailbox money. So the process is probably never passive, but the income you make after you set up that process properly can be very passive, and it can make you a lot of money.
Yeah. So it's basically setting up the right foundation for your business to sustain, in systems, people, because people can technically kind of be, in air quotes, automations for you.
Oh, yeah.
Like having those pieces in line, and this is just for any business as well. That's how you can start to really exponentially grow everything you're doing and save your time to focus on wherever you got to focus.
Yes, absolutely. And I know personally when we had a bad property manager, so me and my parents ended up buying a 56 unit apartment complex, and I'm about to buy with my partners a 80 unit apartment complex as the general partners of a syndication, and also a 71 unit mobile home park. What we're learning, and what I learned the hard way with our 56 unit, is that system, and like you're saying, the people, the automation, like it's all part of the system. If they're not good, it's not going to be passive. Sure. and our first property managers on the 56 unit were horrendous. And I have a marketing brain too, and I like tech and I like automations. And when they didn't even know what an ACH deposit was, I was pulling my non-existent hair out.
Wow. So well, crap. Was that your worst situation with someone like that, like a property manager in the middle of a deal of yours?
So they were pretty bad, and we had to deal with them for a year, and then we got an awesome property manager, and it's pretty hands off. Like my mom and I will email them once in a while, and we'll get some reports. But for the most part, my parents get a check in the mail, and my dad's happy.
Perfect.
Now that we have them, right? But so one of the craziest stories, like just for fun, one of the properties that a buddy of mine got, the property manager was so bad and they were so lazy. And this is an example of a bad turnkey company, is that they just slapped something together. They upcharged it, but it still made sense with the numbers from an investment perspective, but they lacked on the execution. And so they guaranteed a year of rent if they don't find renters. And so they basically slacked off and didn't even try to find renters because they made enough money on the front end. And so basically for 4 months, his property was empty. And when they finally found somebody interested in it, they went to show it and there was a squatter there.
Oh, lovely.
So, there are the ups and downs of real estate, but basically we definitely cut ties with those providers. And, we were basically, we thought that one of my team members, he got a property with him. It looked like it was, everything was going fine until, it didn't go fine anymore. And it didn't go fine for one of our members. And that's when we cut ties straight up.
Got it. Well, I mean, it sounds like it's probably similar to what you said about the turnkey homes. Is get your referrals, get some references in there, and just do your work. Find someone local that knows their stuff.
So I will say local, not necessarily, but definitely know who you. Oh, you mean local to where they're doing it? Yes.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Property managing. Yeah.
Yes.
Got it. Okay. Well, let's you mentioned syndication deals too, and I know you do a lot of those, and you teach on a lot of that. Do you think now would be a good time to bring that up?
Yeah, sure. So actually, me personally, these are going to be our first 2 syndication deals. It's the same one we discussed a while back. Because I've done what's called a joint venture, and joint ventures when you just, you and a partner or multiple partners, you guys just throw money together or whatever combination you want, and you guys just buy a property together. Right. A syndication is where you find people that basically are kind of the people that like turnkey properties, that want to be passive investors, and they're called limited partners. And then there's the general partners, and they're the partners that own a much smaller portion of the deal, but they do all the work, they put it all together, they risk some money up front, but then once they find the investors and they close on the property, any of their risk capital comes back to them most often, most likely, and then basically they're the asset manager at that point. And they manage the managers, and then they just make sure that the limited partners, that they get their mailbox money, right? Mm-hmm. And that's it. And so the cool thing with these is if you find a property that really, that you can force appreciation on it, you can really force it to gain a lot of value on top of all the, the cash flow, which hopefully is at least 10% or, 8, 9, 10%. It can become hugely profitable. And
now, when you say a force appreciation, you mean through remodels and rehabbing and stuff?
Yeah. So let me touch on that. So when you're looking at residential properties, 1 to 4 units, that is in the lending world considered a residential property. When you buy a primary residence, that's a residential, and you get property you get a residential loan. There, they just look at, all the properties next to it in the surrounding zip code that are very similar, and it's called comparables. And they're just if that costs that much and this costs that much, then yours probably costs this much. And it's a lot more complicated than that, but that's basically how it works. Mm-hmm. Whereas with commercial properties, 5 units and above, apartment complexes, it is not like that at all. There could be 2 identical apartment complexes right next to each other. One has 50 units, the other one has 50 units. One has 45 of the units occupied, the other one has 20 of the units occupied. That one that has 20 units occupied is probably going to be worth less than half of the other one. Because it's a business at this point, and how well does it operate is all that people care about. And so what you can do as an investor is look at properties, not necessarily does it need renovations, although that's oftentimes part of the calculus. You look at it as, is there anything I can do to optimize the bottom line, how much money it makes? Because then it skyrockets in value. Because I'm not going to get too much into this, but basically there's a thing called a cap rate, and it's a capitalization rate. So, and it's all it is it's just a number. It's just a ratio. That it's a multiple for what the value is. If it's 10%, then that means whatever it makes is 10% of its value. So if something makes $100,000 every year, it's worth $1 million, right? Mm-hmm. And that's it. And so all you have to do is bump up the rents a little bit, and all of a sudden have it make $120,000 a year. After all expenses, that's the net operating income. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden it's worth $1.2 million now. All you did is you maybe raise the rents by $20 per unit, and boom, you just appreciated $200,000.
Yeah. No, that's a good reframe, because I've always, I've never really looked at it as if I'm buying an apartment complex, I'm basically buying a business. So it seems like it's almost closer to what you see when people are talking about buying and selling businesses than what you hear when people are buying and selling, single family or 4 unit and under homes. It seems a lot closer to a business, and there's multiples and algorithms that people use to figure out the values of the homes. And yeah, that totally makes sense to me. And I've never really thought of it that way until just now.
And I remember, Markian, when you sat us down, we were at some coffee shop in Wholesome Coffee, actually, in North Park is where we were.
Oh, yeah.
But you explained this so clearly, and you were mapping it all out and all that stuff. And I remember, so you had the limited partners who are like the money guys, basically money guys and gals. Then you have general who basically have a lower percentage, but they're the asset managers, like you said. And I believe you said, you know, once you bump up the value of the property, you can, and there's probably some, you know, terms and all this stuff, but you can basically refinance the property to get more percentage as a general partner, say like us being the ones to be the asset managers. So we earn more.
Yeah. So if you do a good job as a general partner, or if you find a good enough deal or a combination of those two things, you should be able to, I mean, the capital event, as they call it, can be a lot of things. Like it can be either a sale of the property, you can refinance, you can completely refinance the limited partners out, and they're going to love you for it. They'll be like, wait, I've been making double-digit returns, and then you just gave me all of my money back. Yeah. I want to do this again, you know. Or maybe you refinance. You know, you can decide in the terms and the operating agreement on one, or you guys could take it up to a vote at that capital event and be like, hey, do you guys want us to refinance and give you some of it back, and so you still have some cash flow, and then, or do you want all of it back? There's many different ways you can do it, but or it could just be a straight up sale and everybody parties afterwards. And
sure, happy days.
Yeah.
Well, what do you suggest? Because like this seems like you could do this. You know, you can keep churning properties, and you know, with the tax codes, I'm sure there's advantages to doing so. What does this look like long term, or what would you suggest entrepreneurs listening, similar to active duty, you know, military folks? Say they get into one of these deals. What does that look like for the future 10, 20 years or so?
Yeah. So I guess it depends on whether they want to own outright and do their own asset management and get maybe like turnkey properties, or if they literally want to be just absolutely limited passive investors on like a syndication or something.
So maybe with because Matt, you were pretty interested in the turnkey.
Well, yeah, I was actually going to sort of have a similar question, just kind of like a reframing of it. But basically, anybody listening, let's say they're an entrepreneur, let's say they've got a little cash set aside that they want to invest, but maybe they're not somebody that has $50,000, $100,000 liquid in the bank. How would you suggest somebody get involved? Like, what's their starting point?
Yeah, so if they're beyond the house hacking, like either that doesn't interest them, like they don't want to rent out rooms or other units, or they actually have more cash and they're like, you know, they're ready to jump into rentals and actually own rentals. Then I think buying turnkeys is a fantastic way. If you still want to not focus on that full time, you just want to buy something, have it cash flow day one, and then have that cash flow help save up for the next one, and then rinse and repeat and just start snowballing that. I mean, if you do the math, like you keep buying these things, that, you know, the combined cash flow from all of them is going to help you buy the next one even quicker and then quicker and then quicker. And then 10, 20 years down the road, you could be making enough that you're just absolutely chilling. Like, you know what I mean? Because, so that is, I mean, if real estate is not, I mean, unless you're wholesaling, real estate is not necessarily a it is not a get rich quick scheme. You do like the buy and hold cash flowing real estate, but it is a path very well followed, and mass amounts of wealth can be amassed over the years, and you can pass that down generationally. And so if that's the end goal, is to just on the side, like if you really love being an online entrepreneur, you know, whatever it is you have, like your Amazon business, Shopify business, affiliate marketing business, YouTube channel, whatever, and you never want to stop doing that for the next 10, 20 years, then just buying turnkey properties on the side is a phenomenal way. Or if you have some more cash and you want to be a part of like a syndication and be a part owner on like a massive apartment complex, then syndications are fantastic too.
Right. For a syndication, you have to be an accredited investor, right? Which you can probably define better than I can.
Yeah. So not all syndications require people to be an accredited investor. So there's basically two different kinds of syndicate. Well, anyways, the two different kinds I'm going to focus on is like 506B, 506C. 506B means you don't have to be accredited, but you can only have up to 35 sophisticated investors, and you have to know them personally. You have to have had at least 3 touch points. Now, I'm not an SEC attorney, so don't quote me on any of this, but that's basically the gist of it. Like, you have to actually know that person, have a prior existing relationship in order to bring them in on the deal. Now, if you want to just get a deal and then be able to blast it out and market it to the world, then it becomes a 506c, in which case everybody has to be an accredited investor. And what that means is either they have $1 million net worth, not including their primary residence, or they have made over $200,000 gross over the last 2 years, or $300,000 if married filing jointly over the last 2 years. And so so basically you have to have pretty solid paycheck or a decent amount of wealth in order to be considered accredited to jump in on a deal that people market out like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess that, depending on where folks are, they can kind of choose their path, which is really cool. And turnkey or syndication, or probably some other options out there too.
Yeah. It just depends on how passive you want to be, because ultimately turnkeys, like eventually the property manager might call you and be like, hey, we need to turn this property. And I want to, spend a little extra money on the paint or something, or whatever it is. Or is it okay if you might have like a certain budget in mind per maintenance thing that you need somebody to ask you about? Like that's part of the system, right? You set that threshold, be like, hey, don't bother me with maintenance problems unless it's over $200, $300. You might still have a question. You might still want to go check on your property because you literally own that thing But with a limited partnership, it's a security. You're a limited partner. You just toss your money in, and you definitely do due diligence on your general partners. But that is about as limited as it gets. That's about as passive as it gets. So there's like a spectrum, right? So it just depends on how involved you want to be.
Makes sense. Yeah. So where do you? I guess where do you see yourself going? Because you're active duty right now. For how much longer?
Probably another 2.5 years, maybe longer. But that's kind of where I have my sights set right now. Is probably another 2.5 years.
Nice. And then are you planning on going all in on real estate after that?
Yeah. Honestly, yeah. So all in on real estate, but still real estate. I'm only 28 right now. I plan on doing business really, because I have my education company, and we're partnering on a mortgage company, and partnering on an insurance company, and we've got like all sorts of stuff going on in our education company, and like everything that spawns from that. That's really going to be probably where I'm going to, have fun, and that's where I'm going to focus most of my efforts, while on the side still purchasing more real estate. So I don't know. I'll see how long I can sustain that. How long that maybe eventually I'll have enough real estate here in the next couple of years to where I can totally just be like, all right, I'm good. I'm going to chill. But for now, I really do love a lot of the nerdy online marketing stuff, which is how we met. I really do enjoy like diving into SEO and learning how to find, or how to help people find the information that we're trying to teach them. We really want to help more people, and especially ours is focused mostly on military and some of the benefits and how they can use that. So, it's a niche, and
Now, a lot of the military, the active duty guys that and girls that come to you, what sort of advice are you telling them to do? Like, what are you telling them to do while they're still active duty? Are you telling them to go and do the house hacking sort of concept and get one unit and live, or get 4 units and live in one of it? Because aren't you guys kind of on the move a lot? I'm just kind of curious, what sort of advice are you telling a lot of the active duty guys to do?
Yeah, so I think for a lot of them, it's kind of scary. I would say 80% of them, it's scary to even think about buying a turnkey property in a different state that they've never seen. Especially since a lot of times, parents have gone through 2008, and it's just like, it's terrifying. But so what we say is like, the first entrepreneurial step could be just buying a primary residence with 0 down, with a VA loan, but buying it in an investment-minded way, to where you can potentially house hack it, or even if you don't want to house hack it, if you ran the numbers before you bought it and you knew that when you moved, you'd be able to use it as a rental that'd be cash flowing. Like that's where we say, like, let that at least be your first step to, and opens the door, and then maybe you get rental properties, and then maybe you move on if that's your thing. A lot of active duty members, like that's literally what they do is they just every duty station, they buy another house. They make sure that they buy it in a smart way. In San Diego, they might not be able to cash flow, after they move. So they might do like Airbnb, and that'll help them cash flow or at least cover the mortgage. Right.
Right.
And wherever the duty station is, wherever the military takes them. And meanwhile, just slowly save up in a pot of money to put down on another rental property, a turnkey maybe. And I mean, I know a guy, I think he had like over 20 turnkey rental properties by the time he got out of the military.
Wow.
And I mean,
that's crazy.
Plus he had a military retirement. So he was doing great. Like I think his military retirement was probably laughable compared to all the cash flow he was making from the turnkeys,
Good for him. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I love about like everything you're doing. And I believe your mission really is to give, active duty folks that you're educating to just show them this vision that, you don't have to worry about scrambling for a job and all this stuff after you're done with your service. Like you have legit income that you can rely on and that you actually control, and the education extend that for however long you want to go. And I think that's super cool, man. I love it.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I don't know. That's exactly what our mission is it's kind of expressing that like, hey,
nailed it.
Like you don't have to necessarily worry as much about saving and what your next job is going to be. You can slowly set yourself up. So you're not stuck between a rock and a hard place and not knowing what you're going to do. Yeah. And, a kind of a delicate topic here is that also a lot of military folk, when they get out, especially if they, have PTSD or whatever, you're so ingrained in the military that you might not have an identity outside of the military. And a lot of the, there's suicides on the rise in the military for veterans because some of them don't know who they are when they get out. And having a side passion and something where you can give back, like what I started saying is like your service doesn't have to end after the military, and neither does your income, right? Like you can start creating that passion, that side hustle, something on the side that gives you another identity that you can dual wield your identities if, as long as you're careful and you're smart. And I think it's going to help a lot of military. And we see it help a lot of military.
Yeah. Dude, we all need something to look forward to in our minds to stay sane and not, like spin out into whatever, like, oh, I should have done this back in the, or, oh, I loved being in the military, but I can't be in there any longer. I hurt myself or, something happened. And, and you're right. I could see where anxiety or suicide type things like that could totally happen, and you're essentially arming them with knowledge and assets that they can accumulate, and boom, there's your legacy, there's your future. Every entrepreneur should be able to relate to this as well, because like I said, again, like we're all active duty in our businesses, so it's same concepts.
I love what you just said. It's like we're all serving in some way. Like honestly, like you guys are serving in a very, like obviously you guys served me, you guys added value to me. Everybody's doing, I truly believe entrepreneurs, if they have their mind right, like that is a service, is you're making the world a better place, and you are active duty in your own way. So I love that.
Love it.
Cool.
Now, tell us a little bit, real quickly before we wrap up here. Tell us a little bit about the online component that you're working on. Is it like a membership? Is it is it coaching? I'm actually not 100% familiar with it. I'm also not active duty military, so it's not really angled at me. So, but can you tell us a little bit about that, the online component of your business?
Yeah. So we have a Facebook group, a podcast. I mean, we've had actually Robert Kiyosaki and Grant Cardone on our podcast already. So, and we basically just created a community, and we have 2 different memberships in 2 different academies. One track is geared towards single family. So it has its own academy, and that's the course that, I initially started. And then it's got like a Facebook mastermind where everybody's doing live videos and challenging each other and taking action. And, and then there's the multifamily side of it. and it has its own academy. And two of our team members, they're like the primary coaches in there. And they a couple of months ago, they launched the first iteration of that, and it's fantastic. And now they can't wait to launch it again in January. And I don't know, it's just awesome. It's awesome to see people like you guys said. It's awesome to see people do what you're passionate about, what you're teaching. Right? It's such a good feeling.
Yes. It's funny, we actually reconnected with one of my old neighbors through your company.
Right. Jason Rivera.
Oh, yeah, Rivera?
Yeah, Jason Rivera, who I have a feeling will probably listen to this episode. So, hey, Jason.
Hey, Jason.
We actually reconnected with him because he sort of got connected to our business, because I think you might have given us a shout out or something in your community, and Jason came out to one of our events, and we reconnected after not having talked for probably 7 years or so. So.
Yeah, cool, yeah, it was wild when he joined. So Jason is one of what we call our inner core coalition, and that is our ADPI, so active duty passive income ADPI certified agents. What we realized is because when military move from duty station to duty station, they need a trustworthy, knowledgeable, investment-minded real estate agent in that area to help them find a good home. Right, somebody they can trust. So we were like, hey, let's have a network of agents, and let's have these agents basically help grow us by, instead of us like charging them 25 or like some companies and charge 40 or 50% commission splits. Like, have your commissions. We're an education company. Just pay us a monthly thing, like a subscription, to be a part of our cadre, right? Our coalition. Take care of our community. We'll pass all the leads to you guys. You're exclusive in your area, and it's awesome because now they're fueling our growth, and it's fantastic.
It's a sweet business model.
Yeah, that is very, very smart.
It's a win-win all around. So everyone's happy. I love it.
We love it. Yeah.
Cool, man. No, I'm happy in small world, and it's happy that you brought up a new or an old relationship back to us too. So, super cool.
Before we ask our last couple wrap-up questions, is there anything that you wanted to cover that we haven't covered? I know you kind of had a little list of a little agenda of things that you wanted to talk about, so I want to make sure we covered all the important details here.
I honestly can't. I think we've covered pretty much everything. This was a wild ride. Thank you guys. We really
we're typically told that. Go everywhere. Yeah, man. That's right. Well, what outside of all this stuff, like what's like one thing that you're just like super stoked on doing outside of the business stuff, real estate and being a Marine, active duty?
Yeah. I'm super stoked about being a Marine these days because I switched my job over to communication strategy and operations, which basically means it's kind of like public affairs, but basically I help our commander communicate in a strategic and purposeful way. It's just basically kind of marketing in the military. It's really cool. And I also have an awesome 1-year-old, almost 2-year-old, and my wife and him are absolutely like, I do everything for them. Everything I'm doing right now is for them. And so that's something that's super cool. And it's just really cool watching him grow up. So those are the two things I'm super excited about.
Cool, man. I love it. Yeah. I'm about to have a baby any week now. So by the time this thing goes published, she should be born. I hope. I hope.
Joe has a new baby. We should congratulate him.
Yeah. But
as of this episode, he has a new baby.
In the future.
Yeah, man. Congrats.
The audience doesn't need to know that we're recording this 8 weeks before it actually goes live.
They all know. We're transparent.
Well, cool, Markian. Do you have any books that you find yourself, recommending often or referring back to yourself often? Or as Joe likes to say, if your house was burning down, what is the one book you would grab as you ran out the door?
I'm not even kidding. I know there's 2 books, and I know everybody probably says these books, but for me, it's just bringing it back to brass tacks. It's just Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and 4 Hour Work Week. Like those are the only 2 books I get to take with me anywhere.
Yeah,
those are the 2 books.
I wanted to say them before you did because I knew you were going to say that.
Well, the funny thing is, a lot of times when I go on other people's podcasts and they ask me, those are usually the 2 books I say, and I'm like, I hate the fact that I'm going to say these because I know you probably had 50% of people say this, but Rich Dad, Poor Dad and the 4 Hour Work Week are literally the catalysts for me wanting to get into business. So why the hell wouldn't I tell everybody that those are the catalysts for me?
Very true.
I can't stray away from that answer. I've told that on multiple podcasts. It's just those two.
And the fact that you got to interview one of those mentors of yours is amazing, dude. Super cool.
And eventually you'll get the other one too.
T. Ferriss.
You know what? So you're like Dream 100, right?
Yeah.
Like, so Eric Upchurch on my team. So I'm actually not the podcast host. Michael Foster is, and we actually have Kevin Brenner, one of our team members, coming in helping him, and Eric Upchurch, another one of the co-founders. He helps out with some of the episodes. Eric Upchurch is like our, like, I call him like, what is it? Mr. Persistent. Gosh, I can't remember off the top of my head. Anyways, he will get to anybody. Like, he'll just keep knocking on that door. And so when we found out, he went to Flip Hacking Live in San Diego last week or 2 weeks ago. And we were like, dude, Jocko Willing's going to be there. And he's like, all right, boom, I'm going to go get him on the podcast. And now in a week, he's going to be on our podcast.
Oh, that is badass. That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's all it takes, man.
So,
it's just be persistent, ask. Most people are so freaking scared to just reach out, even if it's on like Instagram or Twitter DMs.
Yeah.
But even better in person. I mean, that's awesome, dude. Good for you guys.
Yeah, when it comes to podcasting, that's like the biggest advice I can give people who want to do an interview podcast is just reach out, because you'll be surprised by who says yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know. So true. And, it's one of those things, like, if you keep just thinking about it, like, I know that sounds so meta and stupid, but like, if you keep thinking about it, it's going to happen. If you keep just top of mind, it's going to happen. So,
yeah, for sure.
Robert Kiyosaki, Tim Ferriss, I'm coming for you, dude. I'm gonna shake this today.
You're putting it out there, man. He'll show up.
Well, Jocko knows him well, so just ask for the connection there.
There you go. Yeah, that's your way in.
Boom. There you go.
Very cool. Where can people go find out more about you?
Yeah, so website with the hub for everything, activedutypassiveincome.com. The name was actually inspired by Pat Flynn, another San Diegan, his whole smart passive income, and just a little play on words there from me. And then we have a Facebook group, but all of that's on the website. And then people, like, we have, if you're in the military and you want to get into this stuff, we have a book called Military House Hacking, free to download. You can get it on Amazon. You can just email me. It's my first name, Markian at activedutypassiveincome.com. All of those ways, and the socials, like, just, there's not a lot of Markian Siches in the world. So it's a weird Ukrainian name.
So you own the first page of Google is what you're saying.
I hope.
We're coming for you, man. We're pretty good at ranking for our guest names. So.
Yeah.
Awesome, Markian. Well, it's been a pleasure, dude. And I'm happy we finally made this happen. So keep doing your thing.
Yeah.
You're always impressing us.
Yeah. No, this has been a huge moment for me. So thank you.
Awesome, man. See ya.
Hey, thanks so much for tuning into that episode. I hope you loved it as much as we loved recording it. Now, before we wrap this up completely, I want to give a quick shout out to our supporters of the show. These are some companies that have really helped us and have supported the show, and we just like to give a big thank you to them, and they also are offering some cool free gifts for you as the listener. So number one supporter, Podcast Magazine, the preeminent publication covering podcasts, podcast culture, and the podcasts that fans love. It's launching in January of 2020. Prior to launch, you could grab a free lifetime subscription over at podcastmagazine.com. That is a free subscription, a free lifetime subscription to Podcast Magazine, where they are talking about everything podcasting, podcast culture, the podcasters you love, behind the scenes of podcasts. They're ranking and reviewing podcasts. And guess what? Joe and I are actually going to be regular contributors to Podcast Magazine. So if you want to hear more of our insights around podcasting and the shows that we're listening to, and some insider tips about what's going on behind the scenes of our show, we're actually going to be one of the featured experts inside Podcast Magazine. So if you love podcasts, if you're a podcaster, or if you just want to stay on top of what's going on in the growing medium, subscribe now, because you can get a free lifetime subscription until it launches. So make sure you do this early. So once again, go to podcastmagazine.com. Free subscription to this magazine. Go do it. Get on that now. Another supporter that we really, really want to thank is Easy Webinar. Now, this is the webinar platform that we tend to use when we run webinars. If you go to easywebinar.com/hustle, you can actually try Easy Webinar for free right now. And what I love about Easy Webinar personally is that it's got both the live options, so you can just go live with a webinar like you would normally, but it's also got automated webinars where you can make a webinar feel like it's live, but it's happening on a recurring basis. Then they have what's called, hybrid webinars where portions of it are live, but then it goes to a pre-recorded, and then they do encore webinars. I mean, they've got pretty much every feature you can ever want from a webinar. Now, you probably know that webinars convert better than any other marketing tool, but if you thought you know webinars, Easy Webinar is going to surprise you. So with live, automated, all these different functions of webinars, you're going to be using the best onboarding customer platform. You're going to be able to create automated courses. You're going to run automated sales funnels. So much cool stuff that you can do with Easy Webinar. It is our preferred choice of platform for webinars. So make sure you check out Easy Webinar. You can get it for free right now. Get a trial of it over at easywebinar.com/hustle. And check out our episode with Casey Zeman, the founder of Easy Webinar, where we dive into a lot more cool stuff that you can do with webinars. So check it out again, easywebinar.com/hustle. To get a free trial, go to podcastmagazine.com to get a free lifetime subscription. Both amazing products, both products that we use, we're subscribed to, and we support, and can't thank them enough for also supporting our show. So go check those out. We appreciate you, and thanks for tuning in to Hustle and Flowchart. Thanks, everybody, for listening to this episode of the Hustle and Flowchart podcast. Before taking the time to listen, we want to give you something a little bit special. Every single episode that we do, we actually have somebody on our team take notes. We basically have a Cliff's Notes version of every episode where you can go and find all of the tips and tactics that they laid out, all of the resources that they laid out, all the good stuff from this episode. We actually have a nice simple notes version that you can find on our website. So go to evergreenprofits.com, find this episode that you just listened to, and give us your email address and we'll send you the notes. Thanks for listening. Go get it. Wiki.